And ladies and gentlemen, we do apologize for that. We had a little disconnection there, and very unfortunate as we missed the first few moments of qualifying, but nonetheless, we will get you back on board as quickly as possible, as Mr. Charles there has already stated his stamp of dominance with a 135.498 sitting comfortably in P1. We'll continue to monitor that. Mr. Rohey Robinson is sitting in P2. Jaden Harrison is the next closest, or should be the next closest competitor to him, who is just exiting out of the pits. So we'll continue to monitor this as it goes along. We have about 9 minutes remaining in the qualifying session. We'll continue to monitor as the session goes on, as you can see at the top of the screen now. 9 minutes 20 seconds in the qualifying session. Dominic Charles is currently on a faster lap than he already was, and has been the only person so far to touch the 135s, and not just put it in the 35s, but also by a very reasonable margin. So we'll continue to watch and monitor that. But again, we do apologize for any inconvenience there with the stream. Dominic Charles now with a 44.518 in sector 1, which is very much so clear, almost 3/10 clear of Mr. Rohey Robinson there in P2, as he rallies around turn 12 by the final corner to pass the start finish and stamps his dominance now. The Trinidadian with a 135.247. So we'll continue to monitor that. Rohey Robinson is right behind, trying to see if he can maybe catch or maintain that P2 position. We'll ride along with Mr. Harrison here, who is the one who is typically the Max Verstappen of the group. So he's definitely going to be, as you can see him sending it around the final corner to see where he can gain that extra 10th or 2. But we'll just do a brief track walk here as he heads down the start finish into the turn 1. Jaden Harrison is on his first actual lap, so we'll watch and monitor that to see where he comes out here. But I will try and update it, as this current track only has 2 sectors for whatever reason. We'll keep you updated. Dominic did a 44.518, so we'll monitor to see what Jaden does for this lap, as he does seems to be just sending that car as hard as he can possibly send it, as he heads down turn 6 at tight hairpin, heading down now into the turn 7. Slight lift, slight touch of the brake, use it to rotate the car, use as much of the curb, heads now into turn 8, and this will be the fastest part of the track, as there's a very long straightaway and you try and utilize as much of the track as possible. So far Jaden has been almost a hundredths of Mr. Charles ahead, but it seems he might have invalidated that lap. So we'll continue to watch and monitor as he comes along and does use that sausage curb. You want to use as much as a flat surface, but not the sausage curb itself. So we did see him going a little bit 2 wheels over. So I am not expecting this to be the fastest lap, but maybe quick enough to be at least in the top 3. But again, as stated, it seems he had invalidated that lap. He was about a second down. But nonetheless, here he goes, hitting the brakes right after that 100-meter mark. Trail braking right as he hit to the apex, utilizing as much of the track as possible. Slight lift here into turn 2. Hold on without using any gas until he reached about midway through the corner. Hit the exit apex. Slight dab of the brake into turns 4 into 5, and then you have a nice rundown now heading down into turn 6, a slight downhill, tight hairpin chicane, or not chicane, my apologies, but a tight hairpin, right hand hairpin, and you will see him holding and using it as tight as possible, a line as he heads down now into turn 7. Slight lift, slight dab of the brake, rotate the car, use that exit curb now into the fastest section. Slight lift, slight dab of the brakes again, use the green arrow on the exit there, head down flat, 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 flat through turn 8 into turn 9, no lift, utilize as much speed as possible, try and carry as much speed heading down. As he heads down into the final chicane, hit the brakes by the 100-meter mark, use that inside curb. Again, you don't want to use too much of that sausage curb, but nonetheless, Jaden Harrison comes around the final corner now. Slight brake, and you do use a lot of trail braking here at the final corner as well as the first corner. So Jaden Harrison now coming around the final bend. Was that one invalid as well? No, it was not. Now sets a 135.835, so that is his fastest lap so far, and we'll continue to monitor that. Rohir Robinson as well, 136.167. Does look well. He's about 3/10 off in sector 1, 2.5 tenths to be exact. Tries to utilize as much of the curb as possible, heads down into the final corner. And does he improve as he comes around that final corner? Does not improve with a 136.199. Nathan Bryan now, who is typically faster on these kind of circuits, unfortunately is not on his steering wheel there. Jaden Harrison disconnecting, not sure what's happening there, but maybe having his own technical difficulties. But Nathan Bryan unfortunately is on a control, as you see him cutting the curb there. He is typically one to be reckoned with on his steering wheel, but unfortunately, as he is in the Marines at the moment, does not have access to his steering wheel. Stephen Tremblay, I did notice him in the 37 lows in practice, so I am excited to see what he can do, because he's one of our most improved drivers. He's relatively new to sim racing and has just taken this by storm. Kimani Eastman with a 136.776. He is our in-house livery designer. As you can notice, his own livery there on his Hyundai Elantra, and it will be working on his Endurance Cup livery sooner than later. But nonetheless, he is one who is typically in the lower end of the circuit, but clearly finding pace here this afternoon, this evening, in the Caribbean Touring Cars Season 3, or Generation 3, let me say, motor cars. So very excited to see him currently sitting in P4 and a very good gap to the car behind. But when Jaden does rejoin the server, he should be in P5 is Kimani Eastman, so we'll continue to watch that. Hopefully whatever is going on with Jaden, I do see him rejoining the server now. So I was about to say, I hope that it's nothing to do with his internet connection, because I won't name his service provider, but he has been having a few issues in the past with them. But there he is rejoining the server in P2. Roger Keller of Switzerland is now sitting as well in P4, so he will be trying his best to see where he can capitalize and maybe either hold place or gain an advantage in the latter stages of the qualifying session. Stephen Tremblay still watching to see what he can do. We did see him in the low 37, so excited to see what he can bring to the table here this evening. Luis Arenas is as well one of our most improved drivers that we are excited to see here, as he is typically in the Chevrolet Cruze this season testing out the Toyota Corolla. So we'll see where his pace lies in the latter stages of this qualifying session. Has not gotten a good lap down as yet, but nonetheless, Stephen Tremblay will still continue to monitor as he enters into the pits. Dominic Childs now is about to start his flying lap, as he is the fastest driver on track. Maybe at this point trying to see if he can extend that gap, or even just gain a little bit of extra knowledge as he heads down into turn 1 in that brilliantly themed Renault. And who is that behind him? I believe that might be Rohir Robinson. Yes, it is. Trying to follow right along. Mr. Sandman himself clearly has not taken out all of the sandbags out of the cars, but we do know he's a late qualifier, so maybe just saving his last run until the final end of this qualifying session. So we'll continue to watch and monitor him as this session goes along. But nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, I am very happy to see Mr. Charles here. Unfortunately, not seeing Mr. Mikhail Charles in the qualifying as yet. and that may just mean he will not be racing this evening, but he was another one who would be kind of throwing a little bit of extra drama in the mix. But nonetheless, I do know he does have some school projects on the way, so maybe just trying to focus on those and get them out of the way, as he should be entering into the practice test race for tomorrow. But nonetheless, that is Mr. Chris Elliott coming around the start-finish stretch to set his final lap, and I believe that is his qualifying done. Dominic Charles now comes around the final corner as well, does not improve. He was 0.153 slower in sector 1 and sector 2, so did not find the extra pace that he needed. Jaden Harrison now coming around to, where is he now? And just getting a message from Mr. Mikhail Charles. My apologies there, ladies and gentlemen. But Jaden Harrison now is only 10th down on his personal best, so we'll continue to watch and monitor that as he comes flying around the final few sections of this track. Rohey Robinson as well did improve on his time, but does not improve himself into P2. But there goes Jaden Harrison into the final turn 10, into 11, and comes around for the final turn now into turn 12, and does not look like he'll be improving enough to be taking that pole position. So as it stands, ladies and gentlemen, it is Dominic Charles in P1. Jaden Harrison does improve, but not enough, and improves to 135.740 in P2. Rohey Robinson in P3 with a 135.880. The next closest car up is Mr. Roger Keller with Kimani Eastman following very close, only a 10th down behind him. Nathan Brown still on a flying lap, which is a little odd, but we'll continue to watch that as he comes around for the final 3 corners here. But as it stands, he is in P6, and yes, there he is heading into the pits, and it does sit in P6 with a 137.353. Stephen Tremblay in P7, Daville Park in P8, Luis Arenas in P9, Chris Elliott in P10, and Jason McEwen in P11. We have 2 20-minute sprint races on the way, ladies and gentlemen. If the qualifying session is anything to go over, I am very much so excited to see what is to come. Mikhail Charles is now even messaging me to tell me that he's on his way, and we'll hope that will bear some fruit for him fighting down in any of the races at this point. Unfortunately, has missed the qualifying session, but nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, we will have a brief look at our trailer for the 2024 season. Hopefully this will not be another repeat of the server crashing again, but we'll just take a brief look at the trailer. As we take a look at the Trinidadian, Mr. Dominic Charles, who has put the car on pole position, does race in real life as well. One of the fastest sim racers that we've known. His first race with us was actually a collaborated event with the Caribbean versus Colombia in 2022, if I remember correctly. So he's, even though he is new to the Caribbean touring cars, he's definitely not new to the JSRA, somebody who we do look up to, and we've been chasing and chasing, but nonetheless, Very happy that we can find the pace, and I do promise you, even though the gap does look like it is slightly big between himself and P2, the race will be very ecstatic as we take a quick look here at the 2024 Caribbean, well, JSRA safety car here. Unfortunately, I will not get the chance to be driving it until the likes of the endurance race. But what a car, man. I must say myself that this is one of my favorite cars to drive, and it is something that I'm looking forward to purchase in the very near future with the in real life, not just in the simulator. But the Turbo S is one of my favorite cars. Just to put that out there, if anybody wants to send a gift to the JSRA. But nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, with less than a minute remaining, we have a 20-minute sprint race plus 1 lap on its way. Dominic Charles in P1, Jaden Harrison in P2, Rohey Robinson in P3, Roger Keller in P4, Kimani Eastman in P5, Nathan Brown in P6, Stephen Tremblay in P7, Davil Park in P8, Luis Arenas of Colombia in P9, Chris Elliott in P10, and Jason McEwen in P11. It sounds like Mr. Mikhail Charles is actually trying to get his setup ready now, as he's a late bloomer or late entrant to the party. So we'll continue to watch and monitor that. Hopefully he'll be able to get in time, but nonetheless we'll continue to monitor that. But as we said, it is a 20-minute sprint race. 6 lights are on the way. Mikhail Charles unfortunately will be missing this race and will be making it for the sprint race hopefully. But that being said, 6 lights are on and they're off. Dominic Charles with a brilliant getaway. Jaden Harrison there trying to see where he can gain that extra advantage. Rohey Robinson as well trying to stay in the slipstream. Jaden Harrison now will be trying to hold that inside line and maybe get a jump on him heading into turn 1, and there the two go. Jaden Harrison very late on the brakes to see where he can gain an advantage, but nonetheless Dominic Charles does hold suit. Rohey Robinson in P3, Kimani Eastman does make a move on the Swiss driver Mr. Roger Keller and moves up into P4. Nathan Bryan now under threat with Mr. Luis Arenas now fighting for P6, P7, so we'll continue to watch that. Luis Arenas now in the rear slipstream of Mr. Nathan Bryan as they head down into turn 6. Right here is going to be a popular place for overtaking, as you see drivers going late on the brakes, making contact there unfortunately. But we'll continue to monitor as Jaden Harrison now stays in the slipstream of Mr. Dominic Charles. Rohey Robinson already falling back. I'm sure there was some incident to kind of throw him off of his game. But nonetheless, Luis Arenas, Nathan Bryan, and Roger Keller are on the fight for P5. Chris Elliott, Stephen Tremblay, and Jason McEwen. There's 3 fights to behold at the moment, and we'll continue to monitor them as they go along. But Chris Elliott now chasing down Davil Park with the steaming Canadian right behind in Stephen Tremblay, trying to see where he can maybe gain an advantage and make back up some position. He has been the biggest loser so far of this race, but we'll continue to watch and monitor that gap, ladies and gentlemen. Kimani Eastman has a Swiss driver of Roger Keller right there in his rear view mirror. Roger Keller has Nathan Brown in his rear view. Luis Arenas has Nathan Brown right in his sights as well to see who can gain that advantage. But nonetheless, 8/10 is a gap between Jaden Harrison and Mr. Dominic Charles, already pulling a 3-second gap to Rohey Robinson, who has basically lost out. And Kimani Eastman now right there trying to see if he can just catch back up and see if he can maybe make his way up into the podium here in these stages of the race. Roger Keller now in the slipstream trying to see if he can gain back that position as well on Mr. Kimani Eastman. We'll watch and ride along to see what can happen But there they go, as Roger Killer there late on the brakes, but Kimani Eastman with that switcheroo says, sir, you can test your luck, but that won't work with me. But guess what? Roger Killer still has that inside line and does seem to get that move to stick. So Roger Killer, the Swiss driver, is now moving right up into P4 as you have to coast around these corners right now. Kimani Eastman not giving it up as he has Nathan Brown right there in his rearview mirror, but this is only round one, so we'll continue to watch and maintain to see what happens. Dominic Charles now pulling a 1.2 second gap to Mr. Jaden Harrison, who again typically the Max Verstappen of this series, but nonetheless Dominic is just stating his own set of dominance here as there is contact between Kimani Eastman and Roger Keller, so the two do make two, and now there is an incident. So is that Kimani Eastman conceding his position? Nope, he says he's going to continue and fight that race along. Dominic Charles now, again, the gap has dwindled a little bit to under a second or about a second, and these two will continue, so we'll watch that gap as it goes along. But the fight now is for P4 between Kimani Eastman, Nathan Bryan, and Davil Park. Nathan Bryan and Kimani Eastman are very much so used to each other and will definitely be fighting it out. Davil Park as well, we've seen him in the past few series putting on some very exciting moves in the latter stages, so we'll continue to watch and see what he can pull off this evening as they run down into turn 6 now. And it will be, this is not the overtaking position, but you will see the exit here will be the priority as you see Mr. Nathan Bryan there trying to get as best of an exit on Mr. Eastman in front of him to see if he can get that car right, or position right there where he needs to make that move stick. But nonetheless, Kimani Eastman just rotating that car enough and getting out as quickly as possible. Again, we have implemented a brand new hybrid system, so some will be using it in offense like we see Mr. Bryan here, as well as some will be using it in defense. I'm going to assume Mr. Eastman here has not been using it up until the latter stages of that corner because Mr. Bryan was just gaining. But nonetheless, guess what? Davil Park is literally just there sitting in the slipstream waiting on a man to make a mistake, and then at that point he will pounce. And he has seen, we see a little bit of teleporting there and rubber banding that we do typically see in the sim racing aspects, but nonetheless we'll hope that that is just a one-time thing as Davil Park puts his nose there heading down into turn 1 and does utilize as much of the track as possible to take that position away from Nathan Bryan. That was Davil Park to move up from P6 into P5, and now we'll be on the hunt for Mr. Kimani Eastman in P4. At the moment, the gap between Dominic Charles and Jaden Harrison has extended to a full-on 5-second gap. So Dominic Charles there just very comfortable ahead. This looks like one of the drives that Jaden Harrison would have been on, but clearly has made a mistake because Rohey Robinson is now under or right there about a second to Mr. Harrison in front. So we'll continue to monitor and watch that. Please be reminded that there will be a reverse grid after this race, with the top 10 being reversed. So we will see the top 3 being charging through the final or the pack at the end or the start of the next race. So we'll continue to watch and monitor that. But ladies and gentlemen, at the moment the fight is for P5 and P4 as Mr. Nathan Bryan now does take a look on the outside and does not maintain where he needs to be to make that move stick, but unfortunately does not get that move. Jaden Harrison gets a drive-through for cutting, which is very unusual, so clearly feeling the pressure of him of the racers today, and we'll watch and monitor that as he looks not sure what's happening with him here. That was a very slow corner, so we'll continue to watch and monitor that. Drivers are allowed up to 5 cuts per race, so not sure what happened there for Jaden Harrison, but we'll continue to watch that. But the fight for P5, as we said earlier, is still on as the gap between the seventh, sixth, and fifth is now within a second of one another, and Luis Arenas, the Colombian, is only 5 tenths behind Mr. Park. In front, Mr. Park only 2 tenths off of Nathan Bryan right behind. We'll continue to watch and monitor as this session goes on. 8 seconds is the gap for Rohit Robinson to Dominic Charles. I'm assuming Jaden Harrison is now taking his drive-through penalty for cutting there. I'm not sure if that was a glitch or if it was actually him just utilizing all 5 of his cuts, but now we'll have 11 minutes to fight through the pack to at least get back to the podium position there. So we'll at least have a little bit of excitement here as Jaden Harrison comes out right in front of Stephen Tremblay and Nathan Bryan, who are two definitely fighting for position here. So we'll continue to watch and monitor them, but he does come out a little bit ahead and with enough breathing room to extend that gap. So he will now be on the hunt for Davil Park and Luis Arenas right ahead of him. 5 seconds is the gap to the car ahead. We'll watch and monitor that as the race continues. Davil Park now, I'm sure, will be trying his best to see if he can get out of the attacking region of Mr. Harrison behind him. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Mr. Kimani Eastman is now on the podium, and I'm knocking on wood because that might just be the commentator's curse, and I know he's going to message me after this race if anything happens and so what did I say. But nonetheless, Kimani Eastman now is sitting in P3 and will be definitely pushing and pushing and pushing to make sure that he maintains that position for the next 10 minutes plus 1 lap. So let's call it about 12 minutes of racing in this sprint race. Kimani Eastman, who has been our own resident Lando Norris here, to gain not only his own podium, but even to win his first race here at the JSRA. So definitely looking forward to his progression. Again, he has he has been one of our favorite drivers here, but nonetheless, we will not revisit this if there's anything to happen in the latter stages of the race. If there is anything to be said, we'll definitely be blaming it on Mr. Chad Dillon, who is nowhere to be found here this evening, but has well, unfortunately will not be making it this evening, but we'll be making it back for next week as well as tomorrow in the test race for the endurance race. But as Mr. Penley says, hold them, Kimani, get out the pot covers, ladies and gentlemen, as he is maintaining that position. But Jaden Harrison, though, has not necessarily made inroads into the car ahead, as he came out of the pits 5 seconds behind and is still, let's say, about 5 seconds behind Mr. Park. So he has 10 minutes to make up ground, and if it's going at this pace, he might very well be missing out on his very first podium in a very long time. But we'll continue to watch and monitor that, as Davil Park is still very much so on the hunt for the Colombian in Luis Arenas right in front of him. So we'll we'll definitely be watching and hoping for the best for these drivers. Again, though, the closest battle is Mr. Park hunting down the Colombian and trying to get out of the reaches of Mr. Jaden Harrison behind, and will be definitely maintaining that position as best as he can. And we did miss that action there, but Mr. Roger Kello making the move stick on Mr. Elliott there as they head around. That was turn 3 into 4 into 5 now, and heading down the downhill section into turn 6. The other drivers ahead are still not necessarily that far out to reach, so positions are still very much so up for grabs. We will not say poor Kimani as yet, as he is still very much so in the mix and doing very well, if I do say so myself. But nonetheless, again, ladies and gentlemen, if there is a case of anything, please leave all or reserve all comments until after the race to just blame Mr. Chad Dillon, as we will typically do here. We did notice even before the who is that? Yes, okay, sorry, we did notice before the drop in the stream that we you have noticed our brand new license plates, 1962 JM. So yes, we have implemented our brand new license system, and there it goes, Mr. Luis Arenas on the inside of Davil Park to take back that P4 position, and these two are fighting it out, and honestly just helping Mr. Harrison behind to gain back that advantage, and that 5-second gap has now dwindled to under 2 seconds. So I'm sure these drivers will either try to get past as quickly as possible, or will be trying to maybe, you know, stop fighting and, you know, help each other so that the charging Jamaican behind them will not gain that advantage. And three strikes. Oh no, I'm sorry. I do apologize, Kimani, if we do reach to that point in this race, but nonetheless, I am looking forward to your victory. But that being said, 7/10 is the gap between Davil and Luis, and Jaden Harrison has dwindled that gap to 1.1 seconds, so has 2 drivers to fight, and then head up to Mr. Eastman with 5 minutes remaining. Kimani Eastman, if you're listening to me right now, please keep your head screwed on and head and pedal to the metal as you head down for the final 5.5 minutes. And Davil Park now still trying to see where he can make that move stick on the Colombian ahead of him. Mr. Penley, I will ignore your comment, but nonetheless, there goes Davil Park in that very beautiful, if I do say so myself, no bias intended, black camouflage Lancer, and we'll be trying to maybe see if he can make that same move that Mr. Arenas did on him. But Jaden Harrison now is right there in the mix in the slipstream, maybe seeing if he can make a late dive. But defensive goes Mr. Arenas. Does he go a little bit too late on the brakes? No, able to hold a very tight line there and go defensive and maintain position. Jaden Harrison now looking to see if he can make that move stick, and two do make contact, and they are coming out of turn 3 into 4 now, and the two will be trying to see if they can catch back up to Mr. Arenas ahead. Now the gap is 2 seconds between Davil and Luis, so Jaden will either try to get by as quickly as possible and make inroads into the Colombian, and as we stated earlier, 15 seconds is Kimani to Rohe Robinson, but 5 seconds or 4 seconds is the gap to Kimani Eastman from Luis Arenas. This new update though, ladies and gentlemen, it if I do say so myself, I had a Honda Integra DC2 SIR when I was younger, and it feels so much alike. It's the closest front wheel drive car that I've ever driven in Assetto Corsa, as Jaden Harrison there goes very much on the inside, heading around turn 8 into turn 9, now heading down into turn 10. Davil Park has the inside line, but Jaden Harrison there just a little bit late on the brakes, uses a curb and comes out right ahead of Mr. Park, and does take that position away. Now will Davil attack, or will they use each other to catch back up to the Colombian and then mount an attack? You know, that is the smartest thing to do. Jaden Harrison there trying to break the slipstream, so clearly the two not working together. Jaden Harrison now will definitely, I'm guessing, will be going defensive as they head down into turn 1, and no, he doesn't have to. He built up enough gap, and now is on the hunt. 3/10 is the gap between Davil and Jaden. 1.2 is the gap between Jaden and Luis. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen, you did call it, and Luis Arenas has dwindled that gap to under 4 seconds to Kimani Eastman. To Kimani, if you are listening to me, brethren, put that pedal to the metal, because you have a charging quadruplet right on your tail heading for you. So we'll continue to watch, or sorry, triplet heading for you, but we'll continue to watch and monitor that gap, because Deville Park has slightly dropped off of the pace of Mr. Harrison. Now the gap between them is 8 tenths. 5 tenths is Jaden Harrison to Luis Arena. So Deville will definitely be happy to see Jaden Harrison maybe try and slow down the charging Colombian ahead of him as they rally around turn 9 flat through that corner. Will Jaden do a late move? No, not enough space. But again, turn 1 is coming. Jaden Harrison right there, almost pushing the Colombian to go and go and go. And we know Jaden is somebody who will do a little bit of bump drafting, and as we see him there, takes a tighter line to take P4 away from Luis Arenas, but the two will go side by side heading into turn 1. And there goes Jaden Harrison now with the charging Colombian right behind. Will there be a late move? And Jaden does go defensive there, and the two head down into turn 1. Jaden just pushing the elbows a little bit more and takes the ideal line to take that P4 position. 1.5 minutes remains. Kimani Eastman, if you're hearing me right now, move it and keep it going, because right now you have a charging Jamaican with 1.5 minutes remaining. You can see Kimani Eastman there in that Nardo Gray. And who was that? I believe that was Luis Arenas now, who had maybe made contact with Deville Park. Deville Park maybe just backing out of it, maybe knowing that he was the cause of that one, and the two get back racing as quickly as possible. But nonetheless, Kimani Eastman is now the driver who will be on the limits, who will be trying his best to get away. That 4-second gap has dwindled to 3.3 seconds. And again, with the new updated time model, if you are pushing like this, you should start feeling, Nicholas Donald, please come off of my case. If you're pushing like this, you will be feeling the effects of the tires. But that does not just go for Jaden Harrison, but also goes for Mr. Kimani Eastman as well. But there goes Jaden Harrison. You can see him pushing, because he wants that final podium position and will be trying to capitalize. It's 20 seconds remaining in this race. Dominic Charles now is on the final few sections, so he will finish this lap, and then it will be one more lap after to follow. But Jaden Harrison, 2.8 seconds off of Kimani Eastman, is now on the hunt. Ladies and gentlemen, put your money up. Who will be on the final podium position of this evening? Deville Park as well has not given up on Luis Arenas in front of him. So these two will be fighting to see who can take that P5 position. But wow, what a race this has been. Roger Keller is now even trying to make the moves on Mr. Nathan Brown. These two have been fighting it out from the start of the race to now. And again, he did have an unfortunate event in the beginning stages of this race. But ladies and gentlemen, this is your race leader, Mr. Dominic Charles of Trinidad and Tobago, coming around the final section of the track, and will be on his final lap after this one to take his, or stamp his dominance in his debut race here at the JSRA Caribbean Touring Car Championship Season 5 Round 1. So we'll ride along again with him, but he is the fastest man on track with a 135.668. So he has just stamped his dominance here this afternoon, or this evening, my apologies. Jaden Harrison has dwindled that gap to right under 2 seconds. Kimani Eastman must be hoping and praying, and was maybe even hoping and praying that was his last lap, but nonetheless, that gap is now 1.5 seconds. Dominic Charles needs to finish his lap up now quickly, as they are on the final lap. But Jaden Harrison, 2 seconds quicker on that lap, will be trying to maintain and see if he can gain that advantage on the car ahead. Mr. Kimani Eastman late on the brakes, trail brake out of turn 1. You can see Mr. Eastman locking up, maybe feeling a little bit of that pressure, but we know he can go defensive. This is the final lap. Will Mr. Eastman get that podium position? That is only time to tell, as he has a charging Jamaican right there in that blue stripe Ford Focus. He drove the Honda Civic last season, and is enjoying the Ford Focus this season as he is on the hunt for his fellow countryman, for his fellow teammate, and yes, he's a teammate in every other regard, but not tonight, as he wants that podium position to be snatched away from the charging Jamaican. But nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, as Mr. Dominic Charles in his debut here in the Caribbean Touring Car Championship comes around to rally for the sprint race #1, finishes off in P1 to cap off tonight's first race of the evening. Rohey Robinson now in P2 to finish, and almost 10 seconds behind. Jaden Harrison there looks like he needed at least one more lap, as there will be a slight drag race, but you can not blame me anymore. Mr. Kimani Eastman to rally around turn 12. There is still a slight chance, but no, gets a good exit. Kimani Eastman, hats off, ladies and gentlemen, to take his podium position with Jaden Harrison there in P4. Luis Arenas and Mr. Davil Park as well have been fighting it out. There was a drag race, but nonetheless, the two finish it off. P5 for Luis the Colombian, P6 in for Davil Park, Stephen Tremblay in P7, Nathan Bryan comes around the final corner in P8, and the Swiss driver in P9. Jason McEwen did pass the line late and was lapped, unfortunately, so that does put him in P11, and Chris Elliott for P10. Ladies and gentlemen, you cannot complain, you cannot blame the commentator, but it was Mr. Dominic Charles in P1, Rohey Robinson in P2, and Kimani Eastman, we will get his picture this evening, in P3. What a race that was. Come on, guys. Let's get this right. What a race that was, and a beautiful finish here for the gentlemen of this evening. Let's get a proper picture here as the three line up for the shot for Instagram. Congratulations. We do have a 20-minute sprint race coming up right after this, so the gentlemen will be taking a quick break, but what a race that was. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the Caribbean Touring Car Championship. We do implore you, if you want to join us, we have some epic races every single Friday for the next few Fridays coming up. This is season 5. This is season 5 of the Caribbean Touring Car Championship, and clearly we have a new competitor in the mix of Mr. Dominic Charles, Mr. Kimani Eastman as well. Say his name 3 times, because he is now on the podium in P3 and will be starting in P7. What a race, ladies and gentlemen. And again, I think we can firmly and confidently say that Mr. Stewart has no longer any commentator's curse. We will have a brief interview with the trailer. Ladies and gentlemen, stand by for race 2, the reverse grid, in less than a minute and a half. This is not going to be a drag race. Who took that one? What a finish! Who took that one? What a finish! And ladies and gentlemen, we are back. And again, that was an action from race one. I cannot wait to see what is to happen in race two. Jason McKeown is now on P1 with Chris Elliott in P2. Roger Keller in P3, Nathan Brown in P4, Davil Park in P5, Luis Arenas in P6, Jaden Harrison in P7, Kimani Eastman in P8, Rohir Robinson in P9, Dominic Charles in P10, and Mikhail Charles, who will start a little bit further back, oh my word, in P11. But we will continue to watch as the drivers have 6 lights in front of them. Jason McKeown now on his debut will be definitely trying his best to see where he can finish in the mix, and a brilliant start there for Mr. McKeown there in the initial stages of the race. He does typically race in LFM and will be making, well, has been making his debut here. But there goes Chris Elliott now, late on the brakes, seeing if he can maybe, ooh, who is that? Nathan Brown. Oh my word, oh my word, oh my word. And that, ladies and gentlemen, will be a safety car, safety car, safety car. So the drivers will be bringing the speed down to 50. The drivers will be bringing the speed down to 50. And we do have a safety car here, and we will be restarting the race on the next lap. Unfortunately, if you have a multi-car collision of 3 or more cars, we have to just bring down the drama and just bring all the drivers back into the mix. But nonetheless, we'll just get the drivers restarted, as I will be monitoring the race restart. So ladies and gentlemen, just bear with us momentarily as we will be restarting on the next lap. And ladies and gentlemen, there they go. Jaden Harrison being the greatest winner out of them all, already overtaking Dominic Charles there. 4P2 goes a little bit later on the brakes, but Nathan Brown is very much so holding his line. So Jaden Harrison now does have the charging Trinidadian right behind him, and I'm sure will be using Nathan as a buffer. And unfortunately, we have another safety car here, ladies and gentlemen. The racers are very much so antsy and waiting to go racing. All right, and ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for that. We did have a brief talk with the driver, so hopefully all will be well now. Heading into turn one is the Trinidadian and the Jamaican. These are the two that we'll be expecting to be fighting it out for the majority of this race, and I'm sure Jaden will be going as defensive as possible, as he will be trying to pull away from the cars behind, but especially the Trinidadian. He did have Nathan Bryan as a buffer earlier, but now nonetheless he has nobody between themselves other than 5 tenths between themselves. But the pack from P3 all the way down is now under a few cars themselves, but that is only 2 cars, so that will not be warranting a safety car. The drivers will have to be fighting their way through for the duration of the race. Ladies and gentlemen, the gap between P1 and P2 is only 3 tenths. P3 is 2 seconds clear of the cars behind, or ahead, let me say. So he will have some work to do, not just ahead of him but behind, as he has a train of cars. Mr. Davil Park and Mr. Eastman there right behind. Rohey Robinson already making the move stick on Mr. Kimani Eastman, and Kimani looking very late on the brakes there, as you see him careening into the wall. So unfortunate there, maybe seeing if he can make an extra 10th, I don't know, but nonetheless that was not the commentator's curse. I will not accept that one. Ladies and gentlemen, so Nathan Bryan now is under threat on from Mr. Davil Park, who is under threat from Mr. Rohey Robinson. But these two drivers are the ones that we will be watching for the majority of this race now. Between Dominic and Jaden Harrison, 3 tenths is the gap. Jaden will have to go defensive as much as he can, but Davil Park now seeing if he can make that move stick on Nathan Bryan, as the two head into turn 2, now into turn 3, side by side, and Rohey Robinson just waiting to pounce on anybody to make a mistake. And there he goes in up from P5 into P4 now, but Davil Park still maintaining that inside line and does push Mr. Rohey Robinson wide and takes back that P4 position. So Rohey Robinson now will definitely be missing out and trying his best to see where he can gain back an advantage. Finish P2 in the first race, but now we'll be definitely trying to see if he can catch back up to the pack right ahead of him. No, there is no DRS, but there is, I was gonna say ERS, but in this case it's the KERS, the KERS system. It's a hybrid system where you get 15 seconds of deployment per race. So we will continue to watch and monitor that as the drivers go along. 3 tenths is the gap between Davil and Nathan. 4 tenths is the gap between Chris and Davil Park. 7 tenths between Roger and Davil Park and Chris Elliott. So we'll continue to watch that. Dominic Charles now has fallen off slightly to Jaden Harrison, who again is our resident Max Verstappen driver of the day. So we'll continue to watch and monitor that gap, but nonetheless Jaden Harrison has been slightly consistent to just pull that gap away from Mr. Charles ahead, and I will stop talking about them until that gap has lessened, so that the commentary curse doesn't impact them too much. But there goes Kimani Eastman on Jason McEwan and takes back that P8 position. He is one of the biggest losers here. I think he started P8 and now is right back in P8. He did make his way up to about P5, P4, but unfortunately has lost back positions. But nonetheless, P4, P5, P6 and P7 are all separated by maybe about 2 seconds as Nathan Bryan leads the pack. Rohey Robinson did make his way through, and I'm sure we'll be trying to pull that gap and maybe reel in the drivers ahead. But the Trinidadian has lessened that gap from 1.5 seconds now to 6 tenths of a second. So we'll continue to monitor him as he chases the Jamaican in that blue Ford Focus with 10 minutes remaining plus 1 lap. Who will be victorious? We'll take your bets in the chat. But in the interim, we continue to monitor that gap as the 5/10 gap has now dropped to 4/10 as he tries to use that slipstream almost about 9/10 quicker than the car ahead in the previous lap. So Jaden Harrison now will have to be watching and monitoring as he has that charging Trinidadian in the rear view of his mirror. So we'll continue to watch that as 10 minutes remain in this session. But the fight for P4 definitely on the way, as Davil Park there looking like he missed his braking marker and did go very deep into the corner. But this is a track where going deep does not hurt it too badly, as the two come out of turn 2 into turn 3 into 4 now, heading down into 5, and then, well, this is turn 4 into 5 now as I head down now to that downhill section by turn 6, and the drivers will be side by side with Roger Keller there right in the rear view mirror, and Chris Elliott just waiting on any mistakes. You are seeing those tires locking up, so we'll continue to watch and monitor as these drivers continue to fight for their lives. 2/10 is the gap between Dominic Charles and Jaden Harrison, so we'll definitely take a look back at that again, as those two drivers are now 7 seconds clear of Mr. Rohir Robinson, who is 5 seconds clear of Mr. Deville Park. So he's in a race of his own. But there goes Dominic Charles there, taking a look on the inside. Not enough time, but does try to prioritize the exit here, uses the slipstream, and I'm sure has a hybrid system here to kind of see if he can gain that extra advantage. But Jaden Harrison looking like he got the better exit coming out. He's also about 3/10 quicker than Dominic Charles on the last lap, so we'll monitor this gap as it continues. But Dominic Charles is literally just pushing the Jamaican in front of him to see if he can gain back that advantage, or where he can gain back that advantage. The gap now extended to about 5/10, but that is not off of merit, ladies and gentlemen. This is just racing now, as the drivers will be just holding out and being very strategic as the race prolongs. Roger Keller and Nathan Bryan. Nathan Bryan has been the biggest loser here, as he does make contact there with Mr. Keller. And unfortunate there for Mr. Keller, who has made oh gosh, man, he's had a few incidents this evening who that's just taken him out of the mix for the top 4 in each race. So I'm sure he's just a little bit fed up at the moment, as Mr. Kimani Eastman now trying to try his luck on his fellow countryman Mr. Chris Elliott in that yellow Renault, as they rally around the final turn. What's that, turn 8 into turn 9 now, flat through as they head down now. Oh, this is turn 9, my apologies, as the two are almost side by side fighting it out. Kimani definitely getting the advantage, or only 3/10 quicker than Mr. Elliott. We won't be seeing Mr. Elliott in quite some time after today's this evening's race, so I'm hoping that he's enjoying himself there as the race prolongs. But yes, as we do see in the comments, Mr. Alec with White Hawk, thank you as always for the reminder that don't forget to press the like button and subscribe and share when you get the chance for the action to come, because this is the kind of racing that we do look forward to every evening, every Friday, every Saturday. Although we will be taking a brief intermission from the Chase Up Pace series, as that was Kimani Eastman looking like he's going very deep into that corner by turn 1, but does make back up what he needs to make back up. But in the interim, we'll continue to ride along with the Trinidadian, who is literally just pushing the Jamaican of Mr. Jaden Harrison through the track, and these two are inseparable, so they didn't get to see much of each other in race 1. Now I'm sure he's just like the Mercedes driver of last was it I don't remember what track it was. It wasn't Monaco, but it was no, it was not Silverstone, but it was the one with Mr. Oscar Piastri just sitting in the rear view of that Mercedes. It was Jeddah. It was Jeddah, yes, it was Jeddah, sitting in the rear view and just could not get that Mercedes out of his rear front view, and can't forget the sight of that Mercedes-Benz rear wing. So it might be the same thing, or this is just him just being very strategic and patient, as there's only 5 minutes remaining in this race. The gap is still right there under a second. About 6 tenths is the gap between Dominic and Jaden Harrison. Again, this is what we've been missing for the majority of this Caribbean Touring Car Championship. So again, very elated would be an understatement to see Mr. Charles Hare back with us in the, well, not just for Caribbean Touring Car, but just at the JSRA. He did race with us in the iRacing series for round 1 and then got caught up in his real life racing calendar. So we'll continue to watch and monitor that. But Roy Robinson clearly now does have a lot of work to get back up into the mix unfold, because he's typically there very comfortable in P2 and will now have to be fighting his way up if he wants any chance to be fighting with the top 3. Typically leaves his practice until the day of practice, until the day of the event, unfortunately, because he does have work. The Jamaican residing in Japan, but nonetheless, one of the quicker drivers, one of the head developers here at the JSRA for the Caribbean Touring Car Championship, and I'm sure will be trying his best to see where he can catch back up to the 3 ahead. But there they go, ladies and gentlemen. 5 tenths is still the gap, and we'll continue to watch and monitor as these drivers fight it out for glory here this evening at the Nürburgring GP Sprint Circuit. And that is Luis Arenas, the Colombian, making a move there on Chris Elliott to see if he can make that move stick. As the two head down into turn 1, Luis does get the inside line, holds a tight line coming out, and gets a better exit to make that move stick and takes P6 away from the Jamaican. And I'm sure Chris has not given up on that position just yet. We know he is one to just stick and stick and stick and wait for his move to pounce. So we'll continue to watch and monitor that gap, but we'll still stick and ride along with Dominic Charles and Jaden Harrison as they head down out of turn 8 into turn 9 now. The very fast right hander, and the two have been inseparable. The gap has not moved from 5 tenths, so I'm sure Jaden Harrison now is sweating. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to view from Jaden Harrison's point of view, it is in our on our Instagram, my apologies. The fight between the two, live and direct, between Jaden Harrison and Dominic Charles, will be on the way. But please view our story for a live feed from his point of view, Mr. Harrison, that is, as he has 2 minutes remaining in this sprint race to try and defend away from the charging Dominic Charles of Trinidad and Tobago. I'm sure at this moment Dominic would have been hoping for some windshield tear off like you get in the iRacing platform, as in some parts of the track it's literally you cannot see through that windshield, but nonetheless it's not as dramatic as the iRacing platform, as that's just a little bit of sun glare, and it also depends on the post-processing filter, etc. But from our point of view there, Jaden Harrison goes looking very much sideways, and the two opens the door now for Dominic Charles. Coming out of turn 9, Jaden would have the inside line, but it does seem as if Dominic will be holding that inside line now away from Jaden Harrison. Jaden going a little bit later on the brakes, does hold that line, and will he get that position? Does overtake off the track. So we'll definitely, I'm sure we'll be getting some response from, and there he goes, giving back the position, because he knew that wasn't necessarily legal. But this is the last 30 seconds, so we'll have this lap to come plus one more lap after, and this is the moment that we've been waiting on. Jaden Harrison, I'm sure, will be trying his best to see if he can gain back that position. Will be a little bit late on the brakes there, try to see if he can capitalize coming out of turn 1. But there goes Dominic Charles there. Will Jaden Harrison make the move? No, he cannot. Not close enough, and the roles have been reversed. Jaden Harrison now 5/10 behind Mr. Dominic Charles. Dominic has been so patient for the majority of this race, but Jaden Harrison not want to give up just yet, and we typically see him making his moves on the last lap of the race. So we'll continue to watch and monitor this. But ladies and gentlemen, as we're discussing the fight for P1, P5 is now on for P4 between Kimani Eastman and Deville Park. But ladies and gentlemen, as I said, this will be the penultimate lap, and we will have one more lap of racing, I believe, after this race, and these drivers will be fighting it out to see who can gain that final position. But ladies and gentlemen, at the moment, Dominic Charles looks very confident, knowing that he has that move done there and stuck. It was Jaden Harrison who it did slightly sideways, but who will get the better exit here? Jaden Harrison looking very good coming out, but has to do some correcting there, and that sausage curb just threw off the balance of the car just that tad bit much to just break that momentum that he had, leading now on to the final lap of this race. And ladies and gentlemen, he was separated by 0.04 of a second. This is the final race of the final lap of the race, and the gap is between 0.5 between the two. And Jaden Harrison will be trying his best again. That slight, it was just that one moment of lapse of judgment. The car went sideways, and Dominic Charles saw the opening and said, "No, sir, that is mine to be had." And there goes Jaden Harrison trying his best, but as it stands, he looks very confident, knowing that he has his position and can just defend. But we will continue to watch and monitor as the gap extends slightly to about 0.7 of a second, 0.6 now, as the drivers fight and rally through turn 6, coming out of turn 6, now into turn 7. That fast left hander, Rohey Robinson there in the rear view mirror, and now that turn 8, if I remember correctly. But nonetheless, yes, they are now on the final stretch, now heading into the final sector of this race. Jaden Harrison, not enough space to see if he can make a late move, and this looks like a move well done. Dominic Charles now rallying around the final corner to stick it to him for round 1 of this Caribbean Touring Car Championship. If this is the action that we're going to be expecting, we're going to expect to see a lot of late moves in this series. 0.6 was the gap. Jaden Harrison comes in P2. Dominic Charles of Trinidad in his debut here at the Caribbean Touring Car Championship in that yellow Renault takes P1. Jaden Harrison in P2. Rohey Robinson in P3. Deville Park now was under threat by Kimani Eastman. Kimani Eastman tries to stick in the slipstream. There would have been a drag race, but not enough space between the two. Deville Park comes around for P4. Kimani Eastman in P5. Luis Arenas in P6 as Chris Elliott comes around the final corner to take P7 with a very comfortable gap to Mr. Nathan Bryan in P8. Jason McEwen in his debut here with the Caribbean Touring Car Championship in P9. Roger Keller in, unfortunately, did have to just DNF after just being taken out lap after lap. Does finish in P10 with Mr. Michael Charles now finishing up in P11. Ladies and gentlemen, what a race that was. We will rally the troops now for the brief interviews now to hear from the drivers and their points of view. But nonetheless, Dominic Charles in P1. Jaden Harrison did make up for the first race, finishes up in P2, and Rohey Robinson in P3. Ladies and gentlemen, what a series we have on the way. I'm already getting messages from other drivers who unfortunately did miss out this race, and they are saying they are ready for the fights to come. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll have the interviews